Hi everyone, I hope everyone is doing great. Today let's solve this question. Today let's solve this question from LeetCode, which is a house robber. Let's assume that you are a professional robber planning to rob house along a street. Each house has a certain amount of money stashed. The only constraint stopping you from robbing each of them is that adjacent houses have security systems connected and it will automatically contact the police if two adjacent houses were broken into on the same night, right? So basically we are given this array which represents the house, and in each of those house we have these little numbers which basically represents the money stashed in that particular house. And then it says, given an integer array norms representing the amount of money of each house, return the maximum amount of money you can rob tonight without alerting the police. So we are given houses, and then our answer is to find the maximum amount of money that we can stack from that house without robbing the adjacent houses. That's all the question is about. So let's see quickly the visualization of this problem and then what this question is trying to achieve, and then what our solution looks like. So I have written down the array which is same as the test case that we have given here, 1 2 3 and 1. So let's assume that I am robbing this house. Oh, this is too big. All right, let's assume that I am robbing that house, right? If I rob that house, I won't get a chance to rob house number 2 because that would violate our problem. So I cannot rob house number 2 if I rob house number 1. I have to go to house number 3 to rob house 3, right? Let me write this with a big. Let's quickly look at the test case that is given right here, 1 2 3 and 1. So basically this question is saying if you rob this house number 1, and then stack 1 money, you won't be able to stack the money in the adjacent house that you are in. So you have to skip house number 2 and then directly go to house number 3, or you can say the indexed at that particular level, which is second index, and then rob that house instead. And your answer will be 4, because you won't be able to, if you rob this house, you won't be able to rob house number 1, that is at your top level or the last index. So your final answer would be 4, and which luckily is our final answer. That's going to be the maximum, because let's say you rob house number 2, right? You won't be able to rob house number 1 and house number 3, which are both adjacent to house number 2, and you skip both of these and then directly rob house 2 and house 1, but that would give you only 3. So that's not the possible best answer, and this is the best answer. All right, let's solve this question and then derive the solution. This question is particularly related to dynamic programming. I'm gonna write that here, dynamic programming. And dynamic programming is basically an optimized version of recursion, right? So you should you should particularly know the idea of how recursion works. If not, you don't have to actually know to solve this problem right now, because I'm going to solve it a bit differently. But this, if you have an understanding of recursion, it's going to be easier for you to understand. Now let's assume that you are at house number 3. Just assume that you are at house number 3. There are only 2 ways that you are here. For you to rob house number 3, you have to have already robbed house number 1. So your answer would be house number 1's money plus house number 3's money, right? But let's say if these 2 are not your answer, let's say you had 1 here instead of 3, right? And then you are here at 1. Now you have to have already robbed the house at index 0 in order to come here, which would only give you the answer of 2, right? And you won't be able to rob any houses that are near you because those all of are adjacent. If you have robbed that house that you are in right now, which is this, but that's not the right answer, right? If that's the case, you will simply not rob these house. Instead, you will only select that house. So what I am trying to say is you have an option to include yourself and then the previous house that is not adjacent to you, or you can rob the house that is adjacent to you but you won't be able to pick yourself, right? That because if you do that, that will violate the question basically, because you don't want to rob houses that are adjacent to each other. So you have two choices. So now let's see what those two choices are. All right, I'm gonna draw it here. 1, 2, 3 and 1. So basically your answer would be nums of I plus nums of I minus 2, right? This is your I, let's assume, and this is your I minus 2. This is your I minus 1 label. If you were at number 3, you would have to have robbed number 1. That's why you are including both of that. Either that or, I'm writing comma here, or if that's not the case, if those are not your answer, then probably your answer will be your adjacent element. But in that case, you won't be able to select yourself. That's why I'm not writing plus nums of I there. I hope you understood this. And then this is not the actual answer. You have to find the maximum of those, and that would only be your answer. Answer is going to be maximum of both of these. So basically it's like adding 3 and 1, and then 3 plus 1 is 4, and then also trying to choose 2, but the maximum is 4, so we'll only return 4. But let's say like previously I showed you, let's say this would have been 1, right? Now in this case you'd simply do add both of these 1 and 1, which is 2, and then also try to add these 2. Now the maximum of 2 and 2, it will simply give you 2, and that's gonna be your answer. And that's how you will loop all of the elements and then find the answer like that. And then if you reach at the end of your nums array, you will find your answer. But we won't be actually using that nums array because we have to use another dynamic programming array to hold all of the answers. All right, let me show you here how to code that up. Okay, before doing anything, you will define a dp array, which is basically a vector of integer, and then it's gonna be dp. And then I'm gonna because since our nums array is of 3 size 1, 2, 3 and 1, I'll also define our dp array with the num size, and then I'm gonna assign all of those values with -1. Now first, you already have answers that are you have 2 answers that is already given, which we can assume as a base case. You would insert in dp of 0, you will simply insert nums of 0. In dp of 1, you would insert maximum of nums of 0 or nums of 1. Now why? Why would you do this initially when you are looping? Well, because let's assume that you only have house number 1. Let's assume that you only have one house to rob. What would you do in that case? Well, your answer simply would be that answer, right? You'd simply return that as your loot. But let's say you have two houses. Which houses would you rob now? The one with the maximum value. That's why you are choosing maximum of norms 0 or norms 1, right? Now your DP array looks like this. 1, 2, and -1, -1, because we assigned our DP array with -1, and then we already assigned in the 0th and the first index its respective value. And let's write a loop here. Since we already inserted first and second value, we have to start our loop from the second, which is a third index, and then we'll go I less than n, which is basically size of the number, and then I plus plus. Now in each index we would simply calculate the DP of I by maximizing the value. We would store norms of I plus DP of I minus 2, which is basically selecting let me show you right here quickly. 1, 2, 3, and 1. You are right now at 3. You would add yourself, which is 3, and then also add the one that is not adjacent to you, which is 1. Or you can just use that element at index I minus 1, which is DP I minus 1. In each index you will do this, and eventually you will have an answer that you will simply return out of that function. Okay, I will quickly go to the LeetCode and then write this code up so that you can visualize the code and then run it and then find the conclusion yourself. It is very easy. If you dry run this code multiple times and then try to understand it by watching this video, rewinding this video, I'm 100% sure that you will be able to understand this and it's gonna be easier for you. All right, let's code it up. All right, everyone, I'm back here at LeetCode. So I'm gonna define a vector of integer, which is gonna be DP, and then I'm gonna say that I will be initializing this DP array with the same size as our nums array, and then assign -1 to all of its value. Now I already know the answer of only one house. Let's say I only had one house, I'd simply say that I will just return the value at the first house, because that's the only house and then I don't have any option. And now let's say if I had two houses. If I had two houses, I would simply select the maximum of both of these, which is going to be norms of 0 or norms of 1. Norms of 1. Now since I already have looted both the houses, either 1 or 2, I will start my loop with index 3, because it doesn't make sense to start the index with 0 because I already looted on 0 and 1. So I'd simply start with 2, and then I will go till norms dot size, and then I'll do I plus plus. Now I have to calculate the money at each index. I'll simply add my money plus DP of I minus 2, which is basically adjacent, not adjacent element, or I can simply skip both of these and then only add the one that is adjacent to myself, and then I will not include myself, and I will find the maximum of both of these. Whichever is maximum, I'll simply store that in my DP of I. After successfully calculating these, I would have the answer, and then I'll return that answer from my DP, which is gonna be dp.size minus 1, and then it's gonna be inside the DP. Hopefully this will be successfully submitted. Let's see here. Oh, I forgot the semicolon here, my bad. All right, it successfully ran. Now let's see if it gets submitted or not. Oh, we got what do we got? We get address and what did we miss here? Nums of 0 or nums of 1. Oh, okay. I forgot one thing. What happens? We only have if we only have one house, which is basically means less than 2, we'd simply return the first house. That's our answer. I forgot that. I think this will be submitted now. Yes, I forgot the base case. What this is basically, if we only have one house, we don't have to go do all of these because that simply would be the answer. So we'll just simply return that. Sorry about the base case. I forgot totally about that. All right. I hope you all were able to understand this. Code this off, dry run multiple times, and then it's going to be easier. Thank you. Bye bye. I'll see you in the next video.